because I won the nationals and I got 4 gold medals, I then qualified for the world championships. And that year I came ninth in the world when I went to the world championships. And especially going on a stage like that compared to a national stage, because I was competing against people in the world who are, at the top level, which is can be intimidating, and having the ability then to focus more on my mindset, because at that point that was almost more important.
Welcome to the Mindfulness and Motion podcast, the show that helps you move beyond the checklist of life and into a world of joy and meaning and discovery. I am your host, Cori Myka. In this episode, we are talking with Annie Beals. She is a sports performance coach, hypnotherapist, massage therapist, and 4-time Canada National Arm Wrestling Champion. So interesting. We are going to talk about how mindfulness and mindset training can unlock your true athletic potential, whether you're an experienced athlete or taking on a new challenge. This conversation is for you. So let's dive in. Annie, welcome. I'm so curious and interested. I tell people all the time what to do with their arms, sometimes their legs, but I say we have to start with the mind. But tell me about your arms and your mind here with this arm wrestling champion. I'm so curious about this.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Cori. And it always catches people a little bit off guard. Because looking at me, I don't necessarily look like an arm wrestler just sitting here. It's a sport I completely fell into. I didn't look for it. It happened by chance. And I've always had pretty good upper body strength growing up, and I was a climber. I still am a climber, and I've been doing that since I was a kid. And I was also a raft guide as well. So a lot of things involving my upper body, and then of course massage as well. So a lot of training just naturally in that area. And it turned out I was really good at the arm wrestling. And I had a couple of biological things that helped me. I have big hands for my size. I have long arms, which means I have a long lever. And yeah, it just took off. And I started training, and I actually really loved the technical side of it. And of course, strength is helpful, of course, but technique is such a big part of arm wrestling. And I really loved that. I loved that mental side of it, of kind of working out the technique and how to beat your opponent by being smart. And then, of course, performing at that level, an elite level of national. And because I won the nationals and I got 4 gold medals, I then qualified for the world championships. And that year I came ninth in the world when I went to the world championships. And especially going on a stage like that compared to a national stage, because I was competing against people in the world who are, at the top level, which can be intimidating, and having the ability then to focus more on my mindset, because at that point that was almost more important, because I knew what I could do on the table. I knew where my strengths were, my technique, but I had to really focus on my mindset then, because it was intimidating going on a stage like that against people, especially Eastern Europeans, who are known for being extremely good arm wrestlers. I mean, they have high schools there where people go to arm wrestle. So, and, professional coaches, and that's not something that I necessarily had in Canada. And so that was super important when it came to that. And I was able to get myself into a mind frame to compete. But even then, I wasn't actually a trained hypnotherapist then. So that was just stuff that I did myself. And now I took a break from arm wrestling and I'm getting back into it now. But now I'm like, oh, I have all these tools and all these techniques for mindset training in my toolkit. And so I'm super excited to get back into it and see how that changes how I perform.
I love it. And this is something, we always start with our people in swimming with their mindset. And this is one of the points I like to pull forward, is like people who are elite athletes in whatever the field is, and our particulars in swimming. I think about, we see videos of like Michael Phelps getting ready for a swim with his headphones on, and just in his own mental space, right? And like they talk about how he's seen his whole race before he does it. And I say to my people, okay, if the fastest or the strongest or the best people in the world are using mindset, like, why wouldn't we be doing it from the very beginning? So I love that you're bringing that through of how vitally important that piece was when you got to that high level performance. What would you say, I mean, reflecting back now, even though maybe in the beginning you weren't really thinking about mindset, but like what sort of thoughts did you have, beliefs about yourself maybe that helped you in the beginning, that got you started as a novice to be able to, rise up and into this championship level? But at the beginning, what do you think your mindset was about yourself or about the sport?
I think the first thing was that it was really, really fun for me. I really loved the fun in it and kind of that camaraderie in the team. And when I started, again, it's quite intimidating going into a sport that is very, very male dominated. We're talking like probably 90% of competitors or even just people who enjoy arm wrestling are men. And so that can be hard coming into that as a woman. But the people who were involved in that sport were so welcoming and they just wanted to teach me and show me what to do and was so happy that there was a woman who wanted to do it because they want other women in the sport as well.
Mm.
It's not just about macho strength and being kind of masculine about it. And they want to see women represented and they kind of took me under my wing. And so that really helped me because I knew I had a lot of support. And so when I stepped up and was competing, I was able to kind of talk to myself and say, I am meant to be here and I am capable of being here and I am capable of learning from other people as well. And they are here to help me and support me and I can do the same for them. And that was a big part of kind of what also grew my resilience in the sport because like any sport, any competitive sport, or not even necessarily if you're not at a competitive level, you're not going to win all the time. There's going to be failures. And so having that resilience to be able to kind of change your track when you're in that place where like, oh, this didn't go as I planned. And for example, when I competed at nationals, one of my earlier matches was against somebody who she was my toughest competition, but I almost assumed that I was going to beat her. And I think I didn't put myself mentally in the right space for that. And she did beat me in an earlier round, but then I came off that stage and I was able to turn that around. And then the next time I went up against her, I was able to kind of put myself in that position where I knew exactly what I had to do, was able to follow through with that. But I think part of that is to be able to have that resilience to come back after something that could be deemed a failure, but especially when you're in the middle of competition as well. So I feel like that's just super important.
I love that I was listening through all that story, the through line of this belief of I belong here. That's what you said in the beginning, that when you started out and you were hanging out with these men, you had this belief that you belong there. And I would be willing to bet there were some men that didn't care if you were there. Maybe were very nice, but you went to and were with and found your camaraderie with, and you heard through that lens of I belong here. And then going all the way through this allowed this space for you to be able to be beat or fail at that one competition, but you still have the through line of I belong here, to be able to see what is it that I learned from this failure, and then I can strategize. It didn't take you out of the game. It gave you a place still at that table, which I think is so important for anybody launching into anything new, because we do feel like a fish out of water. But having something like this through line piece of I belong here, we're working on here developing an outdoor water facility for rowing. And we're thinking, who's part of the community? And we're thinking, yeah, it's the people who love the water, but don't really get to interact with it very much because they don't know a lot yet. But that sense of belonging, like they are part of it. So I really love that you have that as part of it. That's great. So you started out there and then it sounds like you really kind of developed more intentional mental coaching a little bit later on. So tell me a little bit more about that, how you came to really be more intentional about the mental side of what you were doing.
Well, that first came from being a massage therapist. So, and again, because of my background, I love working with athletes. And when I say athlete, anybody who has a passion about movement and the sport that they do. And obviously, I, helped a lot of people. Maybe they had an injury or if they were just recovering from being just generally an active person or in their sport. But talking to those people, it kind of brought to my attention, into my kind of conscious awareness. I think it was something I was always aware of. But then, when I have these people in front of me, is that what was holding them back wasn't necessarily the physical reason why they were seeing me. So yes, I was helping them physically, but they also shared how they were feeling about their sport or kind of what they were thinking about when they were doing it. And it kind of highlighted to me the importance of looking at both mental and physical, and how, our mind and body are completely connected. They are not separate entities. And so we need to pay attention to both of those equally. And so that was what really, brought my attention to things first, was the massage therapy. And even in arm wrestling, I had friends of mine in the arm wrestling world who saw me for massage. And then that was kind of brought to my attention as well, of like, well, we need to look at the mental side of this as well. And how can we train ourselves to perform exactly how we want to. And so that is when I went down the road of going into hypnotherapy, which then led me to neuro-linguistic programming as well, which is another element of what I do. And I just continue to grow in that area because I feel like now that I have gone into this mental side of the training, I've really found my passion in that. And that is what really lights me up. So yeah, I've kind of stepped into a place where and again, like you said, I feel like I belong in that environment as well. And so that just spurs me on to carry on doing what I'm doing.
Nice, nice. So what are some of the mental things that you were hearing from people that you could tell, oh, this is the thing that's really probably holding them back from connecting with their true physical potential? Are there particular sentences that come to mind or things that come to mind that you would hear from people?
Yeah, that first highlighted to me was actually surrounding like physical capability, such as like after injury, because again, I see a lot of people in massage who either have an injury presently or they had an injury in the past that maybe still affects them to some degree. And a lot of it was, well, this is just the way it is. Or maybe they've been told by another professional, of maybe a doctor or somebody in an authoritative medical position, that, well, this is just how it's going to be. We've got you as far as we can get you, but you're just going to have to deal with what you deal with now. And I am not willing to accept that. And even like in my own personal experience, I had a sports injury when I was 16, and I've dealt with that for over half my life now. But it wasn't until I actually saw a hypnotherapist myself for pain management. And even after one session, my pain of the area that I was working on, so this is in my back, had improved by about 70%. And then my overall pain in my back improved by about 50%. And that improved even more as I went on to do more hypnotherapy with that. And so I want to share that with people and just open their eyes that what you experience in your body is not necessarily all physical in that sense. And approaching something like pain from a psychological sense can actually help improve it. So that was kind of the first thing, because I see a lot of people like that as a massage therapist. But then also a lot of it is surrounding anxiety before performing. So again, whether that is performing competitively or just going out to do your sport. And it was not being able to maybe sleep beforehand because they were so anxious or nervous about what they were doing, or they feel great in training and they're like, I can do this, but then something keeps happening when they're competing. And it was things like that I was hearing that I kind of prompted me to investigate that a little bit more and see what I could do to help that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you went to the place of the anxiety beforehand, because I think that's one that people can identify, that mind-body connection, that like I'm just thinking about doing the thing, and we can physically feel our stomach get upset, or we start wiggling around in an anxious way. So these are really clear ways that we have this connection between, this is totally driven by my thoughts, that I'm actually having this physiological response in my body. I mean, how many people, you probably mentioned not sleeping well, but there's also like toileting things that happen and anxiety before we perform, right? I hear that a lot from folks too. Like, yeah, I need to empty my bowels more than usual, right? I mean, it's an actual physiological response that is completely stimulated by our brain. And I think this can be really useful to help people connect. Like you say, you have this back pain that we don't really want to connect to our brain. And we so often are looking for somehow the body needs to be fixed, or I take a medication or something like that to be able to fix the body, versus looking to the how does my brain influence this? How do you help people bridge that gap? Or I'm just imagining, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, that you have people who are resistant to the idea that I need to take care of my brain, the mental side of things, in order to change my physical body. How do you help people bridge that idea?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody has never experienced hypnotherapy before, it's completely natural to have some skepticism around it. And if somebody is completely resistant to it, they wouldn't be coming to see me for hypnotherapy. But if they are a little resistant, a little skeptical, but still a little bit interested, then that is not a problem. And like I said, I would almost expect it, because if you've never experienced it before, the stereotypical image that we think of as hypnotherapy or hypnosis is kind of stage hypnosis of somebody on a cruise or, in a party atmosphere. And it looks like those people are kind of making the people on stage do certain things that maybe would make us uncomfortable. And some people don't necessarily want that. But hypnotherapy is something that I can show people that they are in total control during a session. And if there's something that they don't want to do, then they will absolutely not do it. But I can bring them into basically like a frequency where they will allow themselves to listen to their subconscious mind and what their subconscious mind is holding on to and needs to let go, or kind of what it wants to bring forward. And that is what is so wonderful about it. And even I was skeptical when I first started, because I've always been very clinically minded. And so hypnotherapy is going towards that other end of things. And so, or it can be. Even when I took my course, I was a bit, I don't know about this. And those first few times when I'm going into hypnosis personally, your part of your conscious brain is still aware of everything going on around you, which is, again, completely normal. It's kind of like just when you're meditating, you still have a conscious awareness of what's happening. And again, that's absolutely fine to be going on during it. And the more I did it, the more I was able to relax into it and allow that to change me in that way and allow me to accept what was going on. And I think that's a lot of it, is that when we have an issue, we try to push it away a lot and be like, how can I deal with this? How can I get it to go away? What can I do? Who can help me? And I think we have to look inward and accept and bring awareness to what's going on in order to get through it and not just push those things away.
Yeah. Again, I'm looking at this through line here. The people who come to you are not the complete people who are completely resistant, but the people who have a little curiosity in there, which reminds me, when you started with your arm wrestling, because it was fun. So this a little bit of fun aspect, not necessarily like knee slapping, hilarious fun, but a fun that says, I'm interested, I'm curious, and I'm willing to see what might be there for me. And which is a wonderful energy to start with, and doesn't mean, you have to go hog wild on the whole thing. There's room for all of our humanness, to have the resistance and to have the unsureness. I love that there's space for all of that. And it's just looking for what this little kernel is. And that piece of what I also enjoyed hearing you say is you're creating a space for people that they can safely, gently go into the subconscious part, which I think is a part that people are very curious about. we have this idea that there is a subconscious part of ourselves that drives things, but we're really kind of afraid to go there, or it's difficult to go there, or you just don't know how to go there. So, yeah, providing some space where you're dipping your toe into it, not like falling into a big puddle of it, but just kind of dipping your toe into it to see what it has to offer you. Nice. Is there anything else you think it's useful for people to know about hypnotherapy or about bringing sport activity or their daily lives? Because it's not just our sports.
Yeah, a couple of things. That was actually where I was going to go with it, is that this isn't just for sports, obviously. You can apply this to any area of your life. And the great thing is that even though, let's say, somebody finds me and comes to me as a client as an athlete and is coming to me for help with sports performance, what we're working on is going to help them in other areas of their life just naturally, because we're working with the subconscious mind at that level. And when you asked me earlier about, what typically are people coming to you for and what are they saying? Well, those things that they're saying are coming from a belief standpoint. And this is something that they believe about themselves, maybe a limiting belief. And oftentimes those things, reason that occurred are because of events that happened to us when we were much younger, and just regular everyday events that may happen to a kid that we then interpret as, oh, I'm not good enough to do this. Maybe we were told by a teacher or something like that when we were young. And then as we get older, we just generalize everything to support that belief. And so then they come to me with help with their sport, and we work on that. Or sometimes I work at a deeper level, of more of an identity level, depending on how deep they want to go into it. And then they find that this actually helps them in every area of their life. Because quite often, if they are anxious about their sport, they are potentially anxious in other areas too. Because often, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything, as I'm sure you are very well aware of. And that is what is so amazing about hypnotherapy, because you can naturally, your subconscious mind will accept it on a level that it then benefits multiple areas of your life. And also I give people little techniques and mindfulness activities that they, training things that they can do alone at home. And then they can focus on their sport with it, but then they can apply it to another area as well. Maybe they're in school and taking a test and in the same way feeling anxious about that, then they can apply it to that as well. It's not specifically just for sports, which is the most amazing thing about it.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's exactly why we do this podcast, is to bring forward this idea that you can find your mindfulness practice and your curiosity on unlocking some of these saboteur ways of thinking. We can increase those sage ways of thinking, like I belong here, right? That was a good one that you were given at some point, that you belong, and it really helped you. But I'm sure there was also some ones that didn't help you, right? And we want to rebalance those. And playing in the field of something like arm wrestling or swimming or whatever physical activity that we're curious about and we want to dive into, when we really match it with being curious about the play of the activity, but also how we're going about it mentally, it's such a fun and beautiful way to be able to expand who we are in our life and our quality of our life. We don't have to just hit our force in meditation to that can be a modality that people love, but so many people would be like, I have to meditate to be able to, you can play with it in other ways. However it comes, that is fun to you. So I love that vision of having it in arm wrestling. If that is a way that speaks to you to bring in the mindfulness into your life and uncover some of these limiting beliefs and open yourself up to more, what a interesting and fun thing. Yeah. Probably not a sport. I mean, in the US too, I'm imagining it's not an overfilled sport too.
There's surprisingly a lot of people who do it. The thing about arm wrestling is you're seeing the same people. It's a very tight-knit community. And so you'd actually be surprised at how many people do it, but it tends to be within that circle. So there is actually quite a lot of people who are doing it, but unless you kind of have an awareness of it, then it's invisible. And like a lot of things, unless we focus on something, we don't really notice it anyway. And obviously, once you get into that circle, then you start seeing things pop up everywhere. Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of people who do it, but until you become part of it, you don't necessarily see it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Nope. Now my mind's going to be looking for it and wondering about it and looking for those folks who are optimizing with their mindfulness. So,
Mhm.
Annie, it was so great to have you here today. And if folks want to follow up and learn more about your work and maybe learn more about arm wrestling or hypnotherapy, how can they find you?
One thing that I wanted to do as well for your listeners, because we talked about people who, maybe you've not had any hypnotherapy before and you've got a little bit of curiosity. I do have an audio recording to give to your listeners, and this will just give them a little demonstration of what hypnotherapy can do for them. And so if they want to get that recording, they can go to anniebeals.com/swimming. And that will be an audio recording to help them step into confidence that they can apply to any area of their life. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. And then, so my website is anniebeals.com. And then I am also on Instagram of anniebeals.coaching. And I have a YouTube channel as well called The Inner Athlete. So go ahead and follow, subscribe, and check out my website. And I'd love to be in contact with anyone.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. So interesting. And maybe I'll start out and I'll do your hypnotherapy and I can tell people how it goes. That would be
That would
super
be
fun.
amazing.
All right. Thanks, Annie. Bye.
Thank you so much.